So good evening, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us at the second artist talk for Beloved Isles. Tonight we have artists Isabella Seguin, Brian Dilbert, and Jodie Miller. I would like to share just a bit about the exhibition before we hear directly from the artists. Beloved Isles is rotating between the National Gallery of the Cayman Islands' two satellite exhibition venues at the Cayman Brac Beach Resort and the Little Cayman Museum. In this exhibition of photographic works by 41 local artists captures the unique environments and people of the sister islands. Collectively, the images depict the natural landscapes, endemic species, expansive landscapes, historic architecture, and the traditions of Cayman Brac and Little Cayman. The project was developed to celebrate our land of soft, fresh breezes, which provides a source of endless inspiration to our many artists, three of which we'll hear from tonight. So with that, I would like to hand over to our first artist of the night, Isabella.
Yeah, so give me a moment just to share my screen.
I will also share the layout of tonight will be that we will hear directly from each artist. So we'll hear from Isabella, and then we'll have a Q&A session for Isabella, and then we'll hear from Brian, we'll have a Q&A, and we'll hear from Jodie and have a Q&A. So do save your questions and for the end of her presentation. Thank you. Over to you now, Isabella.
Yeah, so thank you. So first of all, welcome to my presentation. I'm Isabella, as you already know, and my featured piece is Cluster of Feather Dusters, which you can see on the screen now. So let's get to it. So as I said before, I'm Isabella. I'm 15 years old, and I was originally born in the Bahamas, and I moved to Grand Cayman when I was 9 years old. So in August of 2015, sorry. Yeah. I started diving mainly because it's always been one of my biggest dreams to do marine science in the future as my career path. And I learned how to dive here in Grand Cayman with Seahorse Diving School when I was 12 years old, mainly as a hobby. And it was through diving that I picked up photography. So even like when I was a kid, I remember every now and again playing with my parents' camera, just taking pictures of anything I could find, just like flowers or like bugs or something. And it was never anything serious. I was just playing around. And it was only when lockdown hit that I really started to get into it, because I consider myself to be quite a social person, and not being able to have that interaction with other people, I was pretty bored. And I also really love to travel, and through like social media like Instagram and Facebook, I started seeing other people's photos from all over the world of everyone in lockdown. Because everyone was in lockdown, everyone was taking pictures of like their local countries and islands. And I got to see pictures from all over the world, from Indonesia, Australia, Iceland. And I thought it'd be fun to share some of Cayman's beauty. So yeah, the camera I started off with in photography was a GoPro, but it was one of the older models, so it wasn't very good when I first started off, and the quality wasn't great, and I wasn't really getting the results I was hoping for. But luckily in year 9, I think, I managed to get good grades on my report card, so I convinced my parents to buy me the camera I'm holding in the image, which is an Olympus Tough TG6. This is the camera without the strobe, but now that it's been a year, I do have the strobe now. And yeah, so some of my other hobbies are swimming. I swim competitively. I do a lot of music. I play the clarinet, piano, and I enjoy reading and listening to music. Yeah. So about my featured piece now, this is the image, Cluster of Feather Dusters. I took this image, I think, October 2020. This image was while I was diving in the Brac at Handcuff Reef, I'm pretty sure. And it wasn't specifically a photography dive. It was just a recreational dive. I was with some friends and their families, and we were just there on vacation, and I decided to bring my camera along. And normally, I don't tend to take the wider angle shots. I prefer macro pictures generally, but I decided to play around with it and ended up getting a pretty good photo in my opinion. So these animals, as you can see, feather dusters, are often mistaken for plants because of their flower-like shape, but they're not. They're just marine worms, I guess. And I think when I first heard of this exhibition, which I heard through some of my diving friends, was that this image was one of the first ones to come to my mind. Because even when I was little, I remember when I would go snorkeling, I would always look for feather dusters because they were just so fun. Like any little movement would make them shoot straight back into their tubes. And I always thought it was hilarious as a kid. And yeah, I saw this beautiful like group of them and I thought it'd be fun to take a picture. Some of my favorite things about this photo is the contrast between the red and the blue. I find that here in Cayman, we have some of the most like beautiful oceans in the world. Like the shades of blue vary so much. Like even just on Grand, like if you go more towards the east, they tend to be darker shades of blue because it's deeper, while it's more in the west, it tends to be a little lighter. And yeah, and also with the coral, it's a shame now that we're starting to lose a lot of our coral because of global warming and coral bleaching. So I think that we really need to appreciate the coral we have here in Grand Cayman because it could be a lot worse. So my inspiration for taking photos, obviously, like I said before, I do see a lot of photos from photographers all over the world on social media. And also I have a few older friends who I go diving with who are also very into photography, who give me like tips and tricks. Like sometimes if I go diving with them, I'll stay behind and watch them and just see how they would approach taking a photo of certain animals or coral and stuff. And yeah, so how I approach this photo, for example, feather dusters tend to be pretty shy. Any quick movement will make them go away. So typically when approaching feather dusters, I tend to go as slow as I can, so no rough movements. And also it's pretty difficult if there's a current because they move a lot, they tend to move around quite a bit. So I try to stay as still as I can. And because I'm diving, I'm obviously underwater as well. So if I find like any like rock or sometimes just burying my hand in sand to help keep me stable while I take the photo, it helps the photo come out a lot clearer and less blurry. And for this one, because it's a wider angle photo, I would have my strobe, so my lighting, farther away from the lens of the camera so that it lights up the whole image. Whilst if I were doing a more macro shot, I'd try to keep my lighting, my strobe, closer to the lens of the image. It just helps it focus a lot better. And also I'll adjust the settings on my camera. So play with the exposure a bit, more lighting, less lighting. And yeah. Feather dusters, I find, I really chose to submit this piece because I find feather dusters, you see them everywhere in Cayman. Like, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but even like in small little reefs, like even by Smith Cove, like there's a bunch in the reefs. That's why I thought it was a pretty good submission for this gallery. Yeah, so here are some of my other pieces, my other works. I'm sure some of you will recognize the mermaid statue from Sunset House. And the fish, the queen angel fish at the top left corner was actually one of my first photos. That was taken by the kitty wake, I'm pretty sure. And the turtle here was taken in Little Cayman off Bloody Bay Wall. And the bottom, underneath the turtle, the flamingo's tongue, I would consider one of my, I guess, a turning event when I realized I was good at photography. Because originally I only started doing it as a hobby, but I submitted this photo for a photo contest and ended up winning $100. So that's when I realized, oh, this is maybe something I could do and enjoy. And yeah, that's some of my other works. As you can see, like the bottom two photos are more of my macro shots, which is usually what I tend to go for, but I do once in a while play around more with the wide shot angles. So just another point to add, this exhibition, I wasn't, I only like submitted my photos pretty late because I only heard about it very close to the deadline. So I'm honestly really grateful my photos got chosen for this exhibition, and it just makes me really proud to have my photos of Cayman, which is such a beautiful group of islands, to be featured. So yeah, that's all I have. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Isabella. That was really stunning. And we're really so glad to have you involved in the exhibition. Yeah, go ahead and give her
Thank
a
you.
round of applause in the chat. I'd like to open the floor up to any questions that you may have for Isabella.
I have a question for Isabella. So she said that she's dived in multiple islands, like different islands around Cayman. Which is her favorite out of Grand, Bracken, Little?
Ooh, well, they're all really different, I've noticed. But I have to say maybe Little Cayman. Some of my best photos were taken in Little Cayman, and usually if we ever have a long weekend, we tend to fly there just because it's such a beautiful island, and it's so different to the other two, I find, because it's so much quieter and more remote, I think. Yeah.
We have a question for you that popped up in the chat. Do you take photos outside of the water too?
But well, before I started underwater photography, I did do some on land photography, but personally for me, I just think underwater is way more fun, and there's just a lot more you can play around with, I think.
Wonderful. You seem to really know what you're doing under the water, and capturing the vibrant colors of the corals is just really stunning that you can share what you see down there. Do you have kind of a favorite scene when you go diving?
Well, obviously I really like feather dusters, but I also really like flamingo's tongues, which I showed the image of earlier, but it's like a snail and it has a polka dotted shell, and they're really small, and you can find them on the purple fan corals on shallower reefs, and each shell has a different print, and that's why I think each one is pretty unique. And also just I love eagle rays too, but they're a little hard to find.
Right, harder to capture too, I'm sure. We have another question. What are your favorite things? Oh, I just asked that question. Does anyone else have any other questions for Isabella? We have a comment saying, these photos open an entire world for people who don't dive. Thank you.
Oh, thank you.
They really are stunning, stunning images, and I hope to see more from you.
Thank you so much.
Okay, next up we have Brian Dilbert. Brian, I'd like to hand over to you if you're ready.
All right. Hi. Thank you for having me. My name is Brian Dilbert. My photography name, or sorry, Instagram handle is Mr. _ Shops. Not too many people know of me, but I've been off and on with photography from about 2015, 2014, and around 2018, I started focusing on wildlife, and with the artist call, I actually between 2018 and 2020, I was several trips between Grand Cayman and Cayman-Brac. I was basically starting going to the outer edges of Cayman-Brac. I mean, I grew up there, so I knew my place. I knew the place, so I basically started capturing what I took for granted growing up, which was, the common birds that we saw. The number started to dwindle. And, I basically wanted to take in as much as we could while they're still here today. So with the artist call, I've actually found it as a good opportunity to share, and capture the wildlife of Cayman-Brac. And, oh, sorry, let me share my screen. as it never stopped there. I've actually been exploring Grand Cayman, as with the growing development here, wildlife is actually getting pushed to the outer edges. And host can share in this meeting. Oh, sorry, I think you need to give me hosts back because I accidentally closed Zoom earlier. It's cool. All right, share content screen. Yes. All right. So with these pictures here, this is before I have the, right now I'm on my newest camera, I actually have an 800mm zoom lens, but these were all taken with my Olympus Pen F. And I actually have this unique approach of getting as close to wildlife without disturbing them. And it's allowed me to actually get some close-up pictures of them just doing their thing. This one here, yeah, so this one here was actually taking the eastern edge of Kimmenbrack. I was probably maybe a foot or 2 feet away from them and stayed there. Always loved watching them, just being there with them and not to disturb them. You know, I always have this philosophy of, you know, leave it as you found it, you know, unless there's litter or something, of course, but, you know, not to disturb them, because the thing is that human interaction will actually, you know, change their behavior and eventually drive them further away and so forth. But the unique thing about Kimmenbrack is that, I guess it's because of the small population and it's changing now, but the lack of development, you know, wildlife can still be found in their original habitat from ages ago and can still be found there today. But, you know, with the changing times and so forth, it's actually getting a bit harder now to find them. And, you know, I'm 39 years old, but, you know, as a kid, you know, I always saw bosuns on the side of the bluff, you know, lots of buoys when I was out fishing with my dad. And now at my age now, when I go there, it's, you know, the numbers are just a shadow of what they once was. And, you know, with the rock iguanas, they were common as the green iguanas are today. Back when I was a kid. Now you have to look for them as well. And I'm going to show you guys. Okay, so this photo was actually taken in a cave that is, I would say, maybe 10 people know about in Kimmenbrack. It was, I would put about 100 bats were in there. And I actually have several photos of them. Have several photos of them. And, you know, they're undisturbed. This cave, like I said, not too many people know about it. So they're just there. And I'm going to show you what else I have here. So this is my latest work. These pictures have never been seen by anyone outside of this right now. And, you know, a few family friends, but I actually have been exploring the outer reaches of Grand Cayman now. As if the same thing that's happening slowly in Kimmenbrack is actually happening at an accelerated pace here in Grand Cayman, is that development is actually pushing wildlife out to where I actually trek into the bush so far that I actually have to send someone my GPS coordinates because there's no phone signal. And I'm just going to share what some of these are here. So it's this one. And then this is a very special photo to me. Get it to load up here. This is actually a warbler that was feeding a nightingale chick. And I actually found this about, I would say about 100 feet into the mangroves in Prospect, just outside of Patrick's Island. This chick had actually fallen from its nest and this warbler was actually feeding it. You guys can hear me? Wait, no.
We can
Hello?
hear you. But
Oh, okay.
yeah, we can hear you.
Oh, okay. So this warbler was actually feeding this nightingale chick, and I actually stayed there watching for about, I would say about 20 minutes. I've never heard of this before. Actually, I had to go, and as I got home, I looked it up to find out if it's ever happened. And apparently it does happen out there. It's not often captured, but for about 20 minutes, this warbler was actually feeding this nightingale chick. And I'm sorry, I'm amazed with wildlife. I grew up reading a lot of National Geographic, so but I call it there now. So for this one, okay, now it's loaded. All right, yeah, and this is just on my other work, in no particular order, because I just happen to have my camera with me every day. But this is just some of the other images I've captured. This is a mahogany cuckoo, I think that's how you pronounce it. Never seen one before. I heard it in the bush and went and got my camera, and eventually it showed up in a fig tree near me. I have 2 pictures of this. It's a pelican I captured about a year ago. Yeah, a year ago. Some of these are very special to me. I actually was planning to never share them, because they're just very special pictures to me. But these are my pride and joys here. But it's another one I happened to come across, parrots feeding. When I take my shots, I visualize how I want them to look prior to even picking the camera up. And soon as I, see it the way I want it, I snap. And I don't know if it's just my style. I don't know. I don't bird watch and stuff like that. I just, if I see something that I like and the way it is, that's how I take my pictures. I'm self-taught. I've never taken a class. I've never watched an instructional video or anything. Now I'm up to 3 cameras, and this has just been wildlife is a passion of mine, but I started out doing sunsets. Unfortunately, I don't have any in this album to share. They're very special photos. I'm trying to think of how to display them, but I have too many sunset photos. But that's how I started out, and then I went from that to landscape. But wildlife is really special to me. It's something I feel that I need, like I'm driven to capture it, because I feel that, and I would say in my lifetime, by the time I'm old, probably, I don't want to say it's going to be gone, but it's not going to be the way it is today. And the way it is today is far from what it was when I was a kid. And I always use an example of whenever anyone asks me about why wildlife, why I'm always taking pictures of it, is that as a kid, I always remember that there was this bug that was always in our front yard. If there's any locals on here listening, we grew up calling them wuzzies, but I think they're related to hornets. I've never seen one in the wild in the last 15 years. But if I pay $5 at the Botanic Gardens, I can see them. And it hit me that this was something I took for granted. Like I said, as a child, they were always in my front yard. And to pay to see them today, I mean, just this is a common bug. And to pay to see them today, it's kind of hit me. And so I'm always out. I'm always exploring. I'm always looking for ponds in far out places that the average person can't go, where development hasn't reached, where foot traffic is almost non-existent, just to take in what's out there before it's gone. And that's what drives me. I've seen birds here in Cayman that the average person has not seen out in the wild. I've gone to where they hide, where they refuge. I've walked there. I've taken my truck out to the outer reaches. I've even gone as far as to go into the mangroves within the North Sound and come inland. I unfortunately don't have any pictures of this, but I've actually found black egrets here in Grand Cayman. They're very skittish. There's like 20 of them that I've found so far. Every time I get close to them, I don't have my camera with me out in the water because it's worth a lot to me, but I don't want to get it wet. But I didn't know that they were actually here. And the first time I spotted them was I was trekking in the bush and I was getting ready to actually turn around to head back home. I packed up all my gear and I saw this bird walking in the water. It was behind a tree. And at first I thought it was another bird I always see. And I decided just to check because it was walking in the water with its wings up in the air, which means that it was probably looking for food then. And as I got closer, they all flew up and I couldn't believe what I saw. Unfortunately, I never found them by this pond ever again. But I found ibis wild here in Cayman. There's always 5 or 6 of them in this place that I often visit. I've seen herons in various stages of life. I've found their nests and so forth. Unfortunately, I've also found what happens to them in either an osprey or one of the hawks and stuff that's around here, found them as well. But my whole goal is basically just to take in as much of it as possible before it's gone. And I really should take up bird watching. I honestly, there's a friend of mine that's on my Instagram that I sometimes message to get the proper names of these birds and to help me identify them. But I'm always just taking it all in. This is actually, I did not even know what it was that I was taking a picture of because it was dark. I would honestly say that I just made out the shape of what that there was a bird sitting on this tree, and this is actually heavily edited to bring light back into this. I did not know what I had captured. This was out in Bodden Town off the dike roads. Didn't even know that these birds were actually in Cayman outside of the regular ones that we see flying over here that we call chicken hawks. He had just, gotten his dinner. But this is another one here. This next photo is actually a very special picture to me. I've never posted it online outside of entering it in the Nature Conservancy photo competition that they had this year. It actually made it to the semifinals, the last 40. I did not make it to the finals, but to me it was a big accomplishment making it that far with this photo. It was 101,000 entrants, so I feel I'm pretty proud of myself for this. It's actually the first time I'm sharing this photo outside of a few of my friends seeing it. And this next photo is a bird that we have probably see every single day. It was taken with my Olympus. I was probably about 5 feet away from it. I guess you guys will see why this picture is so special to me. It's just, to me, that this photo here is a picture that I honestly want to feel that I've made the most common bird in Cayman, next to ching chings, look as magnificent as possible. And but yeah, this is my work. This is my passion, my pastime, my de-stressor. I actually got deep into wildlife photography when my dad got sick in 2018, and to kind of get away from the stress of that was to just start exploring and just taking pictures basically. And, you know, I actually had some photos featured. He was still alive when I submitted some photos to National Trust for their calendar. And around his birthday, I found out that some of my pictures were actually chosen for it. And ever since then, I've been pretty heavy into this. So, but yeah, that's me. That's some of my work. Yeah. Yeah. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Brian. I love that photo of you old Arnold. We have a few questions in chat. From Trisha, she says, Brian, your photos are wonderfully raw in a good way. I feel like I'm there seeing them in real life, which is
Thank
very
you.
true. Jodie asks, what kind of cameras do you use? And why do you use those models?
I started out with Olympus EM10, which I still have it, and I moved from that to PNF, which, believe it or not, I still use to this day. It fits into that area where, because of its small stature, I'm able to get close to birds and so forth. I've noticed something lately, because my new camera, which is a Canon R5, which has an 800mm lens, I found that lens spooks birds. I need to figure out how to camouflage it better or something. But with my PNF, I just get in there with the birds, and they allow me to get as close as I want to with them. I take this very general approach. I guess I approach them the way I would like to be approached, as myself. If you go onto my Instagram, you'll actually see a recent picture of a tricolored heron. I got within 2 feet of him with my Olympus. My R5 was with me, but I know I've noticed that anytime I point that and they're close, they run. And I actually feel a bit bad, because I feel like it goes against my whole gentle approach, And if I'm spooking them with that, it's against my the whole way I do my photography. So I'm going to have to work on getting some kind of, it has a camera wrap in it right now, but I need to get something a bit lighter and less, out there. But so it's a EM10 PNF, and then my newest one is my R5, which has a bit of a cheat code in it, that it actually has animal eye detect on it. With the PNF, I have to work for my photos, because it doesn't have as great as dynamic range. So, at a photo with my PNF, I have to have a longer shutter speed, low ISO. And when you're doing that with wildlife, you're going to get a blur if you get into, if they move and so forth. And so that's where that general approach actually comes in. And you don't disturb them, they'll do their thing, pose for you sometimes. And, so to me, the PNF photos, like the one with the Arnold, they're more rewarding to me. They're pictures that I worked for, versus, the Canon, which, like I said, it's with the animal eye detect, it's almost cheating. And of course, with the dynamic range and so forth. Now, with the Canon though, I've been able to get birds in flight and so forth, which is very hard to do with my PNF. Because for me to do that, then I have to have a quick shutter speed, but then, to get, as much light in with the PNF, which is a micro four thirds, smaller sensor, I have to have a higher ISO, which of course creates noisy photos, versus the Canon, which, you know, I can just set it at 800th of a second, and, you know, ISO range, I can go, you know, wherever I want with it. And, you know, my birds in flight photos come out great every time. The other thing is though, is that I actually don't use a tripod. And, you know, a lot of people say I'm crazy because it's such a big lens on the Canon, you know, to not be using a tripod. But I think it's because I've been doing this so long, you know, from 2018 till now, I've managed to be able to track birds and so forth pretty good, and stabilize, you know, my cameras and you know, to capture these images. Like I said, I wish I had some of these photos actually ready for you guys with the birds in flight. But I'm pretty proud of myself for being self-taught with what I've been, you know, the images I've been getting. If you look at my photos from where I started to now, I think I've been, you know, I'm doing pretty good for myself. But you know, some of these stuff is just so special to me. Believe it or not, actually, my photos, I've been taking them to how I want them to look and editing them to how I want them to look for my own personal collection. I've just never printed any of my own pictures, honestly, to display here in my own house. So sharing these with you guys, I feel like I'm showing you a bit of me, per se, because a lot of these pictures are just so personal to me. So again, thank you for this opportunity. You know, this is all new for me. I've been asked by several friends and so forth about, you know, if I've ever shown my work or, you know, if I'm working on a display, and I've never looked into it. So this is all the first time for me outside of Instagram, which I've been secretly working on a web page to show my stuff, but I just never get around to it because this is more for me, if you get what I mean.
Well, thank you so much. I think I speak for everyone when I say that that's very impressive. And it's great to have you involved. It's been wonderful working with you and seeing your work. I do have one last question for you in the chat. What would you say is the best time of day to photograph birds?
Oh, I'm probably the worst person to ask because I'm so random with when I go out. I would honestly say though, if you want to get them doing, you know, like for example here, this photo here, this was taken around 7:30 in the morning. So for shots like this, I would say, you know, the earliest, the you know, the better. I mean, you know, they always say, you know, the early bird catches the worm. Well, if you want to catch the birds catching the worm, I would say, you know, morning time. But I'm so random with my shots. I don't really pick a time. But usually, like when I'm getting off of work and so forth, and you know, from a night shift, I usually just go out to take photos then. So I would say morning, evening time, you know, you can catch them coming back because, you know, birds usually roost in a separate area than where they go to feed. If you actually, around 5:30 in the evening, if you look up in the sky, and yeah, around 5:30 before sunset, you will always see birds flying back to the west. And in the morning around 6, you'll see them flying to the east. I don't know where they roost on the western side of the island, but I do know where a lot of them actually go to feed, which is the various ponds within Bodden Town. You have Meager Bay Pond, which is a very popular spot, which is actually where this photo was taken. Getting access to seeing them is the key part to this. And I'll let anyone who was interested in you know, bird watching and so forth, I will let you guys in a little secret of mine. Do not ever pick a spot to go that everyone goes to. a lot of my pictures, I have fought mosquitoes. I have had my feet, or I should say my legs, past my knees up into mud for some of my photos. It's because even though, you know, people are just bird watching and so forth, in Cayman I find this, not in Cayman Brac, but in Cayman I find this, is that anywhere that there's a lot of foot traffic, birds are reluctant to go to or to be close to. And so, like for me, for example, with this picture, there's a platform by Meager Bay Pond that, you know, everyone goes with their tripod and does bird watching and so forth. I actually got this picture tracking through the mud. I probably got bitten about 100 times by mosquitoes. And, you know, this heron was just there doing his thing, and I was there just watching along. And because that's the key part, is that if you get to where they're not disturbed and it's not a place that they feel that a human presence would be in, this is how you'll get stuff like this. And that's all I'm going to say.
Absolutely.
Other secret spots and techniques and so forth. But
Trish, did you have one last question?
Yeah, a question and a compliment. You brought up something that's really important about being an artist, and that is how you said that when you show people your photos, you feel like they are seeing something of you, like you're showing them a part of you. And that, in my experience as a writer, I can really relate to that. And I've learned that vulnerability of allowing your art to show a part of you is what really makes an artist. And so thank you for trusting us to show us, you know, these pictures. And
thanks again.
And I encourage you to, you know, be comfortable with being vulnerable, because your pictures are moving, and it would be wonderful for more people to see them.
I actually have other pieces, but they're not wildlife related. I kind of stuck to the topic for these. But I've actually taking photos of the moon. And I've been trying to step away, not fully, because I mean, like I said, you know, wildlife is still my passion. But I'm just trying to like just broaden, you know, and kind of not mainly focus on this. But I actually have about, I would say, 2 separate series of photos that I am dying to share. Because they're easier for me, because they're not, my heart isn't as deep into them as they are with wildlife. And so that's why I'm actually struggling to speak on these, because like I said, these pieces are just, this is my heart here.
Well, we appreciate you sharing, like Trisha said. Thank you.
Thank you too for that.
You're very welcome. Okay, next up we have Jodie Miller. So I'll go ahead.
Hi.
Okay.
So first off, thank you, Paige, for all your hard work on this. It's appreciated and we're grateful. And then just basically, I don't really consider myself an artist as such, because I take pictures as a sort of diary and to share with friends and family all over the world who aren't able to witness my children growing up because we moved here. So as you can see, predominantly in the past, all of my photos are of the children at the beach. So this one's at Public Beach. That's my daughter. And then the next one is my husband throwing her in the air, and I think that one was at Governor's. The next one is my daughter at East End. The next one again at the boat, we're on a friend's boat, she's jumping off the boat, and I'm absolutely captivated constantly by the colors of the sky and the sea in Grand Cayman. Like, it doesn't at any point fail to surprise me in how it looks, because it's just outstanding. So, and then the next picture, I think, is my daughter again. So I really love this picture because it encapsulates her naughtiness. She's on a much smaller child's bike in a private garden, just being a minx. And I think that is very much who she is. And then the next photo, I think, is of my son. Yeah, so we were at Easter brunch at Grand Old House years ago, and he just was doing like a little colouring book, and he just looked so pensive, and again, it encapsulates who he is in the photograph. And then the next one is the last one of my children, I promise. And then that's again another one at the beach, where the colour of the sea and the sky just it never fails to take my breath away, never. Having grown up in Scotland, as you can imagine, the beaches in North Berwick don't look anything like that. So it's always a real treat to head down to the beach with the kids and send some pictures back home for friends and family to see. But basically, every photo I've ever taken has been with a phone. I don't own a camera, much to my embarrassment. But this year we went on a family staycation to Cayman Brac, and it was our first time, despite having lived here for 7 years. And I took a series of photos in black and white in the Brac, and the reason that I took them in black and white was so that I could remove the colors to show more what was actually in the photo, rather than just being breathtaking by the colors, which is what always happens. If I post this picture on Facebook, everybody's like, oh my god, that doesn't look like a real beach. Whereas when I took my pictures in the Brac, so if we go to the next slide page, sorry. So this is the picture that was chosen for the exhibition, and I took that literally I think the car had stopped to let someone cross the road, and I took it out the car window with my phone, and then I filtered it with the black and white. But I just thought it was so, I really liked these pictures because they took away the beauty of the colors and left behind the beauty of the land. And although, it's a small church and it's not necessarily the most beautiful church anyone's ever seen, but I just love the shape and the symmetry of the building itself, and then the clouds behind it. It was just taking the colors out of it, for me, made it more beautiful. And then the next one was another black and white of the Soleil d'Or in the Brac, and we had gone to do the farm tour. And while we were waiting, I was looking at the ivy and the plants growing up the side of the building, and I was really taken aback. And again, I'm fairly certain it was grey because I think it rained that morning, but the colours in the building were astounding. And then to take them out, it brings it back down to a level of sort of, you can see only what it is and nothing more, which I thought was quite pretty. And then the next one is that was just a beautiful palm leaf that was when we were out for a walk one day, my son and I, and we stopped to have a proper look at all the sort of fauna and flora in the like along the sort of path that we were walking, and we just thought that was really pretty. And again, if you take the colour out, it really makes the palm leaves themselves more sort of striking against the grey of the background. So anyway, I think I've got one more in this, and then and then that was just a view. Someone said to me, oh, you'll love Brac, it's like California. And that was a picture I took to remind myself that in many ways it is a wee bit like California, and it's very different to Grand Cayman. So I just took that one and kept it to one side. So so those are my pictures. Like I said, I'm not everything I take is with my iPhone, and I document almost everything everybody does around me with my phone. And I just really love taking pictures. I think I've got over 5,000 on my phone at the moment, and periodically I'll go through and delete you know, numerous multiple shots of the same picture. But no, I just really like it, to have it and to know that it's there for the children as and when, you know, they want to look back. So it's more of a sort of a diary of their lives in photo format as opposed to, you know, an artist's work. But I feel incredibly grateful that my church picture was chosen for the exhibition, and it's made me, you know, almost want more to take more photos beyond that of my of my family. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much. That was wonderful. If you have any questions, feel free to join in or post them in the chat. I really love your black and white series, and I see what you're saying about rather than focus on the color, it focuses on, you know, the shapes of the plants, the contrast, for the architecture, it focuses, you know, on the history, heritage. I think that's really, really lovely. I was curious what kind of draws you to this older architecture when you're photographing.
Do you know what? I think it's like, if I see something that feels like it's unusual to me, I quite want to take pictures. Like, there's honestly thousands of photos on my phone of just like random things, and every now and again I'll go back and I'll crop it, because I do, like, you know, edit them on Instagram, so I filter them, I crop them, I you know, change perspective or move the main focus to the left or the right or up or down. So yeah, there's photos of absolutely everything on my phone. Yeah, there's I couldn't possibly say what it is that draws me, but when the car stopped and I looked out the window and it was that little church that so perfectly just there on the plot of land, and it also looked so isolated even though there was buildings on both sides of it. Yeah, and I was just quite drawn to that one.
Well, we're glad you were drawn to it, and it's a great addition to the exhibition.
Thank you.
We had a comment from Trisha, kind of saying similar, along the same lines. So we do have a lot of iPhone or phone photographers in the exhibition, so you're not alone there. Trisha is one of them. So she says she shoots on an iPhone, and she loves the way the black and whites are portrayed and how they highlight the patterns and textures.
Yeah, I agree.
In the images is really wonderful, that you might not focus on if it was in color. Wonderful point. I think we have a question from Kay, or a comment.
Yeah, just a comment really. You know, an artist not determined by the tools that they use, and don't undersell yourself because you're using an iPhone, because you really are an artist. Your photographs are absolutely stunning. So
thank you.
Give yourself a little pat on the back.
Thanks, that's really nice to hear. Thank you.
I will say proudly that every artist in the exhibition is, you know, a photographer, an artist, and it's just the medium is different. So you're either using, you know, like Brian uses a Canon sometimes, other people might use a phone camera. So, and everyone's vision is different and unique, and I think that's really what's so wonderful about these artist talks, is to see those visions. Did we have any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I'd like to share something. So going from underwater to, you know, in the bush to, you could almost say, a mix of historic buildings and landscapes in black and white, has been just a really rich grouping of photography.
Absolutely, it was a great range.
So I'm so glad I came, and now I can't wait for the next artist talks to see, you know, and I know you probably just put us together randomly, but wow, just tonight's has just been so so full of contrasts and colors and now patterns. It's been amazing. So thanks to all the artists.
Thank you, artists. Let's all give them a round of applause in the chat. It's been really wonderful. Are there any final questions before we end tonight's session? Okay, well, thank you all so much for joining us tonight, and thank you to the artists for presenting your wonderful works. It was great to hear from each of you. We do have another artist talk coming up, so I will be in touch. Just RSVP, and we hope to see you there. So thank you again for joining us.
Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Good night, everybody.
Thanks.
night.
Bye. Bye.
All right.
Thank you. Good night.
All right.